You gotta have house music all night long. With Manchester made me funky.
Hi, I'm Mark Dennis and Manchester made me funky. So house music has been a massive part of my life for a very long time now, I wasn't a massive house fan when I was growing up, and then probably around 15, 16 a few friends started to go to the hacienda, and we went out for a night out into Manchester on my birthday, walked into Holy City Zoo, believe it or not, and Mr. David Dunn and Big Danny were playing, and I heard this music that I'd never heard before, and I went there every week for as long as until it was a night called Too Kinky, and I went there every single week until it closed down every Friday because I just got into it that much. And sorry, I'm fucking out. I forgot what the question was then. You're gonna have to edit. A lot of editing, mate. A lot of editing,
so, yeah,
mate.
what music means to you and what's your sound?
Yeah, so house music to me, you know, is a part of my life every single day, whether it's in the studio or whether I'm out listening to music. You know, it's always around me, and my family have obviously taken that on board as well. And my sound, I'd say, just lots of energy, lots of vocals. The sounds have changed a little bit over the years, but the main core of house music in my sets has stayed pretty much the same. Sort of lots of energy, and it's got to be sort of uplifting, nothing too dark. Yeah, the temple was insane. It was probably the first big residency that I had in sort of Greater Manchester. 3,000 people every week, some of the biggest names. I was only 18, 19 when I played there. Absolutely insane. Swimming pools, waterfalls, a chill out room which had an aeroplane fan in it, I think it was. Got up to all sorts in there, which was, you know, it was a real eye-opening experience. Got to cut my teeth with some really, really big DJs. And went on to make some appearances on the radio and things like that, and it kind of, having a residency like that helped you go and get work elsewhere because you were part of something so big. It was mixed, I think it was like one of the top 5 clubs in the country at the time as well. Absolutely insane. It had a trance room, it had a chill out room, and they had big names in there as well. All the Americans came over and played there, and it was just a massive party every single week there. Kind of, yeah. We are our own person. We're not like joined at the hip or anything. But myself and Tony met in the late 90s at a club in Manchester, believe it or not, called Rennie's, which was in Oldham. And Tony was actually the first guest DJ that I ever played with when I was young. And he played one night, and he turned up, and he was on Galaxy at the time. He had a really big show. He was networked around the UK. And he was the first guest DJ that played at Rennie's in Oldham. People might remember it. It was a mental Friday, and the doorman, it used to close at 2, but the doorman used to actually lock the doors and make us carry on playing till about 4 o'clock. They used to shut everyone in the venue, and he came and played, and he was getting into his set. And the first thing he actually ever said to me was, I was a young lad at the time, so I was like a bit nervous, you know, all these guys here off the radio and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, you all right, mate? And he was like, yeah. He was into it, and everyone was dancing and stuff. And the first thing he said to me, I said, are you okay? Do you want a drink? And he turned around to me and just said, I'm going through a divorce. And that was the first thing he said to me. And I probably should have left it there and never spoke to him ever again. But here we are, 20 odd years later, and we hit it off, went to lots of parties together, played at the temple together, launched record labels, and we've still got businesses together, we've produced together, and it's kind of gone on from there. We're like the amp and deck of house music, I think we are. Yeah, I think so from old school to sort of funky house, it's kind of like merged in that kind of mid to late 90s. Places like Love to Be, which is obviously where I still play at now, and we're really pushing that American sound. The hacienda was playing, you know, the piano-y kind of stuff, and a lot of the American music started to come over around about that time. And you had stuff, I mean, I remember the first track I heard, which kind of crossed the bridge, which was like a disco-y sample, was Jocelyn Brown, Happiness, Kama Sutra. Just a massive vocal with a big disco sample, and it kind of went on from there, and everyone, a lot of the producers started to discover disco and kind of sample the disco tracks, and I think that's where funky house kind of really took off from there, I'd say. Yes, so on the funky tip, I mean, there's millions and millions of tracks. It's like the really hard thing to do, but to define a funky house track, I think Tracks, I'd say probably the original white label of Freemasons, Love on My Mind, that came out was a huge track. It crossed over loads of different genres. I'd say a track, because I played around that time, I was playing a lot between Leeds and Manchester, and they both had their own sound. Manchester was probably more funky house, Leeds was a little bit more electro around that time. And I'd say something like Texas in a Smile was a big one on that kind of tip. And then you had stuff that crossed between funky and soulful. Harry Choo Choo Romero and In I Hear Day, Just Can't Get Enough. Huge track, still in my box today. And on that kind of super club tip, I'd say Afro Medusa Pasilda. Not really funky house, very Latin-y, but it was something you dropped in the middle of a funky house set. And then onto probably stuff like Red Carpet, All Right, big end of the nighter, massive tune around Manchester whenever I played at like a Revolution and at Venus and places like that. They were the kinds of tracks, you know, huge vocals, that kind of defined that kind of funky house sound for me. No, it's a funny thing because I think it's been for killing the clubs, I think it's been a lot of different factors. I think festivals have not helped, nightclubs, definitely. The weird thing when the smoking ban came in was really odd because when you'd be DJing, I remember the first weekend it came in and I was DJing in Leeds at Space and literally everyone kind of left the dance floor at the same time, which was really weird. And we were like, oh my God, what have I done, you know, kind of thing. But everyone started going for a cigarette at the same time because they wanted to have a chat. And then it sort of kind of sorted itself out. So I don't think that helped like your basement clubs who didn't have an outside smoking area. And as far as technology, you know, it's always going to move on. One thing I do miss is working in a record shop and selling vinyl to DJs. You know, it was, and I always say it now, it was the best job I ever had. Probably it was on par with DJing because it was such a laugh. You had the social, you know, element of all the guys coming into the shop, the banter. You know, you got to get especially when you was working in there, you got to get all your music first and things like that. So yeah, from a what's the word? From a what's the word I'm looking for? You can edit this, can't you? Yeah.
I'm not doing though.
Yeah. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm not thinking of a word, but I can't remember. I can't really remember. So I think from a sort of purist point of view, you know, I'd love to still be playing vinyl. Don't miss lugging it round, you know, and I don't think a lot of DJs miss lugging it around. And music is certainly more accessible now. DJing is open to everyone. I think back in the day, there was only, you know, you had to really know your music. You had to go into a record shop and really know what you were listening to. The buyers in the record shop had to really know what they were listening to. My big bugbear around download sites is the quality control on there and the, you know, your track sources and your beatport. They don't have that quality control, whereas you had a buyer in a record shop who really knew what they were doing, really knew their stuff, and they pushed that sound to the DJs. And all the DJs around that time were playing a similar kind of sound. They weren't playing, you didn't have a DJ that was playing one thing. You know, we all tried to find the same records that we'd heard on the radio and, you know, the white labels, and then you try and protect those records because you wanted to be the only one who had them. Now, everyone's got every kind of track and everyone's got access to the music, which, you know, it's leveled the playing field in some respect, but it's also taken away that when you go to a beefer and there's that one big track that's being broken out there. So it's taken away a little bit of the sort of special feeling of hearing a track for the first time because, you know, music is so accessible these days. But as far as technology, you know, it's got to move on. You know, it is what it is, you know, and we've all got to embrace it. Yeah, so I think house music's gone a little bit full circle, which it always does. I think it's, you know, you had big piano house in the mid-90s and then the funky house era, electro, and then house went into that deep house era where it was very slow and a bit minimal. But this last couple of years we've noticed, especially playing out in Ibiza and stuff like that, the younger generation are getting more into big pianos, big vocals again. So the funkier sound has actually come back round, which is tied in well with kind of what we do with production, because myself and Tony produce under the name Trim Tone. We've still got the Love to Be brand, which it's helped musically because we've always stayed true to the core. And I think Manchester Made Me Funky is going to really benefit from that, not just for the older crowd who, you know, went to Venus and Twisted Elegance and Naked and all of those nights. You're going to get a younger crowd because of the music that's being pushed on the radio now. So I think music will always have a bit of a life cycle, and it'll always come back round. And I think, you know, the funkier stuff has actually come back round, and I think that's going to be here for a good couple of years, because there's some really good stuff out there at the minute, and especially with us for our record label, it's really benefited us, because that's the sound we want to be pushing and we want to be playing. So to me, a good house track, you know, it's got to have some energy, you know, it's not boring, you know. I think a good hook, you know, we all, as producers, we want to try and make the best track and the biggest track possible, but to get that one track, you know, it's very rare to get that one track which the whole room will kind of engage with. So I think it's got to have pure energy, you know, it's got to be uplifting. You know, nothing dark or anything like that. We all like a tougher track and stuff like that, but it's always got to have that energy and a little bit of a soulful element as well. That's what, you know, that's what really sort of gets me up in the morning to house music. Well, I think you say, like, I think Manchester Made Me Funky is taking everything up a level from, like you say, the funkier house nights, you know, you maybe have like I said, 500 to 1,000 capacity events, and very rarely you'll have something on that scale. And from what we've seen from the teasers, the lineup itself, you know, it's a festival kind of lineup, you know, so it's taking that core element of an intimate funky house night and putting it on the big stage. You know, the best of the Manchester DJs are going to be there, some absolutely insane PAs, and when we've seen some tease of the production level is going to be kind of just going to knock it out of the park, basically, you know. So I think Manchester Made Me Funky is going to really raise the bar from where funky house nights were to a real spectacle, and it's showcasing what funky house was about. Yeah, it is. Well, breaking into the scene is difficult, and it's always been difficult because it was always such a closed industry. You know, when I was 17, 18, I was competing with guys who were 28, 29, and DJs have always generally been older. So I'm like one of the older ones now. So, you know, but you've got to, you know, you've got to have respect for people that are coming through, and I think the younger generation, they've got to respect what's gone before them, like we did. You know, and I think tips-wise, you've got to stay true to your values of what you want to do. You know, don't start just playing something that's not going to make you happy, really. As a DJ, you know, you don't kind of just go with, you know, a sound that you're not happy with playing. I remember a Manchester DJ, actually, Jay Floyd, gave me some advice once when he saw me DJ. I played with him, and he said, "Oh, you'll do really well. You're going to do really." He really likes me as a DJ. And I was very young and very naive. And he said, "Oh, you'll do really well as a DJ." I was like, "Oh no, I just like doing it, you know," and blah blah blah. And he said, "If you stick to what you're doing, the cream always rises to the top." And I always remember him saying that to me. And then when I got some, you know, some good residencies and stuff like that, you know, it always stuck with me, that. And I think you've got to pass that down to young DJs, because it is so difficult now. Because going back to what we said about the music earlier, everyone can be a DJ now. Everyone can go and get a pair of decks for 200 quid. You know, it's not £1,000 on a pair of Technics anymore. You know, so they've got to graft, and, you know, you've got to work hard and, you know, go and do the 5-hour sets in bars, which everyone's done, you know, and go and put yourself out there. Still go back to what we used to do. You know, I remember turning up at a club I saw was opening, and I turned up on the Friday night with my records, and I said to the owner, "Oh, I spoke to your manager in the week and they said I could come and play for an hour." And he was like, "Oh, did you?" And it was really awkward, but they put me on for an hour and I got a residency there. And, you know, so you could probably do a little bit more online now than opposed to just turning up, you know, this little fat kid from Manchester just like rocking up to your door with a box of records. But yeah, I think you've got to work hard, and you've got to, you know, you've got to keep going, and networking and network with the right people is really important, but it is really difficult. And as a promoter, one, there's not a lot of venues to do nights in, you know, so you've got to make sure that's right. And you're competing in such a big market, and especially if you're running a night with 400 or 500 people, you know, the younger generation especially, you know, they're saving their money for festivals, and it is difficult, but, you know, there are opportunities out there, and there are young people coming through all the time. Yeah, I think it can, yeah, you know, I think music in general, you know, no matter what you're into, you know, I think just if you can get into a sound of music, it can lift your mood, you know, it can make you forget about your troubles. And I think especially with the last year, we've all had challenges, you know, as DJs, we've had no work, you know, we've all been stuck at home, and, you know, people have lost people. And in particular from ourselves, our personal experience, we've been streaming every single week for 18 months now. And we get a lot of messages saying, "You've really helped us through lockdown. You know, we've had that thing to look forward to every Saturday. you know, it's really lifted our spirits. It's brought people together in the chat rooms on Facebook and on Mixcloud, you know, and we get a lot of messages saying it's really helped our mental health, having that to look forward to. So I think music, absolutely, you know, if you're feeling down and you put a track on that you love, and you know, the goosebumps come up, you know, your endorphins are flying, aren't they, you know. So I think that just crosses any genre of music really, but house music in particular, because it's so uplifting and the funky sound, and you know, it sort of can help you forget about, you know, any troubles in life. So yeah, definitely a healing process. So I'd describe house music as, you know, it should be fun, you know, it should be uplifting, it should be, you know, I'd say to them, you know, it's got to make you dance. You know, I don't know if you take a complete unknown person into a club and they are stood there, you know, I'd challenge anyone not to be able to bob their head to it at least, you know. So, and I'd just describe it as a sound that brings people together. It creates a community, you know, and like you say, the nights that were particularly in Manchester, they were all a lot of regular people that went there every single week. So it's a family, you know, definitely house music is a family. Yeah, clubbers are the key to the nighttime economy, you know, and I think they've been given a hard time from the, you know, governments and the councils and things like that. But you know, the clubber is key to the success of the night. You know, if you've got a club that's empty, you know, no, it doesn't benefit anyone. The clubber, you know, helps the DJ. They become the followers. You know, they support the DJs, they support the promoters. And they can make them or break the night, because if you get a good core crowd of clubbers, you know, and they're up for it every single week and they're spreading the word and they're telling people about your event, you know, they are probably just as key as any element of running a night or event. I'd say, so clubbers now going back into it, it's going to be mental, it's going to be absolutely off the scale, people are going to be absolutely up for a party. Be safe, be sensible, but you know, enjoy it because you deserve it, and we all deserve to have a party. And I think Made Me Funky is going to be absolutely insane, and it'll be so good to be, for me to be in a DJ booth, seeing people together dancing, and get out there and enjoy it, because you know, everyone's really missed it. Hi, I'm Mark Dennis, and Manchester made me funky.
You gotta have house music all night long with Manchester made me funky.